Hello, everybody. My name is Keith Logan, and I am with group number 8.
Hi, my name is Alejandra Torres.
Hi guys, my name is Isabella, and for this presentation I will be covering the feminist ethics and Weinstein comparison cases.
Again, my name is Keith Logan, and I want to explore the latest headline in the news entertainment media that has a deep ethical issue in which we believe society is overlooking. Today, we're going to take a look at the case of Sean P. Diddy Combs, and more importantly, the question of responsibility, not just for one individual, but for everyone around him. Sean P. Diddy Combs was convicted in federal court and is currently serving a 50-month prison sentence for transporting individuals across state lines for prostitution-related activities. Now, he was acquitted of more serious charges, including sex trafficking and racketeering. But here's where the ethical question begins. If behavior like this existed within a larger environment, the question is, who else knew? And if others knew, why is accountability focused primarily on one individual? Why isn't this a collective responsibility? Now, during this brief presentation, we're going to look at 4 ethical theories that we have studied during our semester together and how they approach the current P. Diddy situation. We also will look at another ethical issue toward the end of this presentation to compare and for relevancy. But first, let's look for the first of 4 ethical theories we covered this semester that relate to P. Diddy and the enablers.
Deontological ethics, mostly notably associated with Immanuel Kant, centers on the idea that right and wrong are determined by adherence to moral rules and duties rather than by outcomes. Applied to the ethical dilemma involving P. Diddy, this framework suggests that if he violated fundamental moral laws such as respecting the dignity and autonomy of others, then his actions are inherently wrong regardless of any consequences. Furthermore, deontology extends moral responsibility to those around him. A key principle of duty-based ethics is that remaining silent in the face of injustice constitutes as moral failure. Even if the legal system doesn't hold enablers accountable, deontological ethics maintains that they had a duty to intervene, report, or resist the wrongdoing. While deontology judges actions based on adherence to moral duties and principles, utilitarianism evaluates actions based on their outcomes. This theory determines right and wrong based on the consequences of those actions, specifically to the extent to which they promote the greatest happiness for the greatest amount of people. In this particular case, deontology would argue that wrongdoing is inherently immoral regardless of the consequences, while utilitarianism would focus on results and consequences. An action is wrong if it produces more harm than good. P. Diddy's actions would be judged based on the suffering they caused, and the enablers are wrong not just because they stayed silent, but because their silence likely allowed harm to continue and increase. Both theories ultimately condemn the actions, but for different reasons. Deontology emphasizes a failure of duty, whereas utilitarianism emphasizes the production of harm. Care ethics shifts the focus away from rules and outcomes and centers morality on relationships, empathy, and responsibility to care for others. Instead of asking what rule was broken or what produced the best outcomes, care ethics asks who was harmed and how should we respond in a way that nurtures and protects people. Applied to the ethical situation involving P. Diddy, care ethics would focus heavily on the experiences of those harmed and whether there was a failure to show compassion, protection, and moral responsibility within relationships. If individuals were exploited or mistreated, Care ethics would view this not just as a rule violation or harmful outcomes, but as a breakdown of human care and trust. Additionally, enablers would be judged based on their failure to care. If they were in positions of proximity or relationship and chose silence over protection, care ethics would see that as serious moral failing. From this perspective, ethical responsibility isn't just about avoiding wrongdoing, it's about actively responding to those needs and well-being of others, especially when they are vulnerable.
Now, talking about feminist ethics, they are built not just on care ethics, but they go a step further by examining power, inequality, and systemic justice, especially about how they affect women and marginalized groups. Some influential thinkers in this space of feminist ethics are Simone de Beauvoir and Kimberly Crenshaw, who emphasize that ethical analysis must consider how social structures such as gender, race, and class shape people's experiences and vulnerabilities. Applied to the ethical situation involving P. Diddy, feminist ethics would not only focus on individual actions, but also the power dynamics at play. It would ask whether individuals were exploited, silenced, or treated as less than, equal to, due to imbalances in status, influence, or gender. If so, the wrongdoing is not just personal, but also systemic, reflecting deeper patterns of inequality. Additionally, feminist ethics would critique the role of enablers by examining how systems of power may have protected wrongdoing or discouraged accountability. Silence in this framework is not just a personal failure, but can be a reflection of institutional structures that prioritize power over justice. Ultimately, feminist ethics call for accountability that addresses both individual harm and the broader systems that allow such harm to persist. Now, looking at the Weinstein comparison, it is a useful comparison to the ethical concerns surrounding P. Diddy and can be seen in the case of Harvey Weinstein. Both situations highlight how power and influence can create environments where misconduct is not only possible, but at times protected. In each case, there are allegations of harm carried out within systems where individuals held significant authority over others, often leaving victims vulnerable and hesitant to speak out. What stands out in both is not just the alleged wrongdoing of one individual, but the broader culture that allowed such behavior to continue over time. Patterns of silence, fear of retaliation, and institutional protection play a huge role, raising serious concerns about accountability. The comparison reveals that these situations are not isolated incidents, but are examples of a continuous pattern of unchecked power and the lack of intervention that can contribute to ongoing harm.
Wow. I hope everyone learned something that they never learned before. But as we wrap this up, I don't want us to walk away thinking about Sean Combs and Harvey Weinstein. This is bigger than them. What we're really looking at is how power works. What we're looking at is how power eventually silences people and how the system can either protect people or it will fail them. Because in both situations, it wasn't just about one person's actions, it was also about the fact that people around them knew what was going on and they chose to be quiet. And they also chose not to step in. And that's where it hits home for many of us. If we ever find ourselves in a space where something isn't right, the question is, do we ignore it or do we say something? Do we protect comfort or do we protect people? Friends, at the end of the day, ethics isn't just something that we study, it's something that we need to live out in real time and in real decisions. And the truth is, those decisions matter more than we think. I want to take this time to say thank you for tuning in to our brief ethical dilemma discussion. We hope that you enjoyed this. Thank you